If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel or my podcast, you can do so by clicking on the subscribe or the follow button. And don't forget to add me on Instagram. And let's begin. So thank you, Prasad, so much for being with us here today. And congrats on hitting 1 million subscribers on YouTube. So to the 4 people who don't know about you, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I mean, we are Finnovations. We are a fintech company and trying to aware people about finance, investment, and mainly we are focusing on stock market and mutual fund. I mean, we started in 2014. The first video that is uploaded on YouTube was in 2014. Then we started, uploading videos continuously. But at start, the focus was not that much on videos. We were uploading blogs. We are mainly into blog. Then later on, from 2017, we started focusing on the YouTube, and then it really catched up quickly. And then the journey, went ahead. And then meanwhile, the support from the subscribers was very, very, it was great support from the subscribers. And also today, also they tell us, they guide us like what we should do next. I mean, that is the best thing about the subscribers, I would say.
So that was a lovely introduction, Prasad. So in one of your interviews, I read that you were an engineering student in the beginning, and then you shifted into the world of stock market.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about why you shifted?
Yeah, let me tell you that story. I mean, after 10th, I mean, basically I'm from a tier 3 city. So after the completion of 10th, I went for diploma, that is diploma in engineering. I chose electrical engineering, and if you opt for the diploma, then you can't do anything else. You have to do engineering compulsory. Right. So after diploma, I knew that I had to do the engineering. I mean, there is no other option. So I had to do it. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter whether I wanted or not. So, and in the 3rd year of the diploma, that was like, you can say, a turning point for us. Where I came across the newspaper Economic Times. One of my roommates, I mean, his friend was reading this Economic Times newspaper. He would come to a room, and then I started reading that, fascinated, and then started reading books about finance and investment, and that is how it all started. So, and then I went for the engineering in Pune, and I was never interested in engineering. I still don't know the difference between voltage and current and what actually it is, EMF, MMF. I was just reading those things out, writing in the paper, and somehow managed to pass. That's the whole story. I was never interested. I would, when I was in engineering, I would go to Mumbai, go to the fort, and in fort you get magazines, old magazines at a very cheap cost. Like you get the old magazine, and Force new magazine would cost you maybe 100 rupees, but old magazine would cost you just 10 rupees. So I would buy those old magazines, and then used to come back to Pune, and then I would read it for 2 to 3 months. So that is how it was. I mean, I was enjoying, and I would not attend the lectures as well. So our modern college library had lots of books related to finance, and lots of newspapers were there. So I would just read the newspapers and books rather than attending the lecture. So that is how, I mean, engineering was all about this for me. I mean, I was not interested, and I would avoid attending the lectures as well. Yeah, I mean, the question was like, why did you switch, or how that switch happened? So was never interested in the engineering, and hence the whole focus was to enter the field of finance, and then opted for the MBA. But it also didn't work out well for me. I after the first semester, I decided that this is not something that I actually wanted to do, and then I decided not to continue it.
So while you were deciding that you wouldn't continue engineering, did you have any fear in your mind that you don't have a backup for job or security, something like that?
I completed engineering. I didn't complete the MBA, and then there was no backup at that point. I mean, after the that was, I still remember the day was 17th December 2015. That was the day after. I mean, on 16th my exam finished, and from 17 I started working on this thing. So there was no backup or something. In fact, I had taken a bank loan, education loan for my MBA, and that loan was also, it was also big figure, so there was a burden as well. But at that time, I mean, this thought didn't come across, and I thought, okay, let's go ahead and do this, because actually it was like third venture, so the earlier two ventures were failed miserably. So there was some confidence that this time it will work out, and that is why I went ahead and didn't think about anything else, and plan B or plan C, nothing.
Yeah, third time's a charm. So a lot of our viewers are from non-commerce background, and when they hear about the stock market, they are usually confused because it isn't taught in schools and stuff. So if somebody wants to learn about the stock market, what resources were helpful for you, and how should they pursue or learn about the stock market?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple resources available. The first one that they could start with books. I mean, that is what I started with, but it is a time-consuming process. I mean, it took me lots of time. And why I started and why I entered in this field, the main reason is that availability of the material. If you want to invest, if you want to learn about stock market investment or mutual fund investment, you'll have to read lots of books, and not everyone is an avid reader. There are many people who don't like reading, so I thought, like, let's make some videos for them, and videos like a quick way to learn lots of things in 5-10 minutes. You'll be able to learn lots of things, and that's why we try through our videos. I mean, they are like short videos of 7-8 minutes, and we try that each and every minute should be full of knowledge, and so I mean, videos, then books. Apart from that, you can follow some great investors on Twitter. So these are the three good ways to learn about finance and investments.
So even my journey started with YouTube. Yours was one of the first channels I found on YouTube, and I remember I had watched your video on Harshad Mehta scam back in 2018. I had watched that, and the simplicity of the video was pretty amazing. So can you talk a little bit about how your process goes from creating a video to actually publishing it?
Yeah, I mean, those days, it would take lots of time for us to make the videos, because we did not have a proper graphic designer. So, we would have to manage it, through with the help of freelancers and all. But, then one of my friends started helping me, and he said that I will take care of the videos. And, then from the March 2017, we started uploading more and more videos. So as far as the process is concerned, I am the one who take care of the content. I am the one who record the videos, and then the animation is added by the graphic designers. Right now we have a team of graphic designers. So there are many graphic designers we have, and just that is the process how it goes. And as far as if you ask the time it takes to create, so generally it takes 2 to 3 hours for me to create the content, and maybe half an hour for the recording, and then the graphic designers take around 6 hours to make the videos. I mean, that is how it goes.
So you also have a channel based on the stock market news, like FinPoint. So how do you manage to gather so much of data in a relatively short amount of time? Like, how do you get real or genuine news in a limited time span?
No, actually, when it comes to the news and all, we have to depend on the media houses. So there are multiple media houses available, in India, like Bloomberg Quint is there, Economic Times is there, then ANI, and many more players are there. So we try to, get those news. We try to simplify them. So there are multiple sources. I mean, we are never short of the sources. But the only thing that we have to do on our part is to simplify them, because finance is complex, in nature. So many people feel problem. Like if you're reading any article, you might, come across many words that you don't know the meaning of. So you would say, okay, what's the meaning of this? And then after that, you may not be, I mean, once you come across such 3-4 words, then you may not be interested in reading the whole article. So here, the whole focus is to simplify those news and just provide it to the, and we are not a media company. So we are just trying to simplify those things and just tell it to the people. So in the 4-5 minute videos, we try to cover around, 7-8 news so that people can, so the people should be updated about the finance and investment world, and at the same time they will get the whole, all the news in the simplified manner.
Yeah, that's great. So another question. So a big chunk of our viewers are relatively young, from 18 to 24-year-olds. So if they want to pursue a career in the stock market, should they go for a professional degree like CFA or NISM, or should they go with day trading and other banking jobs?
Yeah, that's like it depends actually, like what kind of job or something you're looking for. I know practical knowledge is always, it's a better thing, and theoretical
Yeah,
knowledge is like Indian education system. Everybody knows that, what we follow is like people of 19th century are teaching to the, are teaching the content of, I would say that content of 19th century is taught by teachers of 20th century to the students of 21st century.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I mean, that is the reason, like, I did not continue the MPA because whatever they were teaching, the whole syllabus was very, very old and it was not relevant to the current, date. So, I mean, going for the degree or that's better, but I mean, it doesn't mean that it should be like that. I have seen there are many fund managers are there who are without the MBA degree. They just have graduation degree and sufficient knowledge. So ultimately, if you go for the fund management, like in mutual fund or PMS or hedge fund, all that matters is the client should get better returns. They won't see
Yeah,
that the fund manager is a MBA graduate or CFA or he has NISM certificates or not. All that matter is how, what kind of return the fund manager is giving. So, it's all about the practical returns and things like that.
yeah, that was a good response. So now let's dig deeper into some technical stuff. So last week the news
So,
came out that Reliance became a $200 billion company. So if you're analyzing a giant company like Reliance, do you go with individual components like oil or retail or telecom, or do you analyze it as a whole?
whenever I try or we try to analyze the company, we look at like where the great chunk of revenue is coming from. So as far as Reliance Industries is concerned, most of the business is still the old age business. The most of the revenue is coming for the petrochemical and O2C business. You could say most of the revenue is coming from O2C business, and around 30% revenue is coming from the retail and telecom. But Mr. Ambani knows and everybody knows that the retail and telecom is the future. And that's
Yeah,
why here he's trying to focus more and more on the retail and the telecom platform and trying to acquire more and more companies and trying to increase the revenue that is coming from the retail and telecom. So obviously the focus will be given on what kind of retail, what kind of revenue the Reliance retail arm and telecom arm might generate in future. So I mean, because that 70% other part, that is O2C business, is a cash cow to them, and there is no growth. If you look at the last 5-6 years of O2C business performance, that's mediocre. But if you look at the geo performance, that is going good. Retail performance, that is going good. So pressure right now, there is a pressure on Reliance Industries, and the pressure is that more about majority of their revenue should be coming from the retail and telecom in the next
yeah.
2 years. If that doesn't happen, then the valuation there might be some valuation concerns.
That was good.
There will be some
Uh,
valuation concerns. Yeah.
so while analyzing a stock for long-term investing, everybody pretty much looks at the same data like EPS, P ratio, debt to equity. So what makes a good investor different from a great investor? Like everybody has the access to the same data, but what do you do differently?
Yeah. So the only thing that is required very much while analyzing any company, or that is what you have to do actually, is to predict the growth of that company. Right. The future price of that company lies in the growth. I mean, if that company grows, then you'll be able to make lots of money. If that company doesn't grow, then you may not, you'll not be making money. For example, once upon a time, like in near around 2006, 2007, Reliance Communication was trading at the price of 700 rupees.
Yeah,
Business didn't perform well. Profit was converted to losses, and a company was making lots of losses. And then, as you know, the current share price is around 1 rupee. So
yeah,
shareholders had to bear lots of losses in that particular deal because business did not grow. So your whole focus should be on this particular thing, that there are two important things. First thing is the business growth, and second thing is the valuation. So one thing that you have to look at, like whether the business will grow or not, and at what rate it will grow. Like 15% if the business will grow at 5% per annum, for example, then you can expect the returns of 5% per annum, right? So you are getting fixed return of 6%, 7% in FDs or PF, etc. So obviously you should be looking for higher returns. So whenever you are trying to invest in any company, your focus should be that if that companies can give you return of more than 10-12%, then and only it makes sense to invest in that company. That's part number one. But if the company has a business growth, that doesn't mean that you should directly invest in that. Second part is the valuation. You need to check at what price that company, I mean, you're getting that company. So if the valuation is very, very high, then it doesn't make sense to buy, because if you buy, like let's say I take an example of Britannia. I mean, Britannia's Good Day biscuit, it is you'll get it at 10 rupee, and the biscuit is good, something is good, you find that its value is somewhere around 12-13 rupees. The price is 10 rupee, but if you find that the price is around 13-14 rupees, then and you are buying it at 20 rupees, then it doesn't make any sense. So you always have to calculate the value of that company according to you. It is called as intrinsic value. Let's say Reliance Industries right now is trading at 2300, somewhere around 2300 rupees, and you find that the value is around 1500 rupees. I'm just taking an example and assumption. You find that the value is around 1500 rupees, then it doesn't make sense. I mean, even though you feel that the company will grow at the rate of 10 or 12%, then also it doesn't make sense for you to buy it at 2300, because it's if you are feeling, if you feel that the intrinsic value is 1500 rupees and current price is 2300 rupees, then according to you, that stock should be very, very overvalued. So valuation and business growth, both things should be taken care of.
So while calculating the fair value or the intrinsic value of a stock, do you go with complex methods like discounted cash flow method, or do you use something else? Because a lot of people don't know how to calculate the intrinsic value.
The DCF method is quite complex. Yeah, that I agree.
So speaking of growth and valuation, so some companies are growing really fast at 20-30% a year, and they have high valuations. But when it comes to profit, you don't see a lot of profit, especially in tech companies. So do you think these companies are like good to invest in, or do you stay away from such companies?
There are some tech companies who are actually doing good. They are showing good profit growth. They are their products and their services are also fabulous. But yeah, there are exceptions as well. But if there is no profit growth in any company, so there is no reason to invest in that company, because that company will that be good for its employees. It could be good for others, but the profit growth is not there, then it's not good for the shareholders to invest in.
So just expanding the idea, if currently there is no profit growth, but it is assumed that in the next 3-4 years, profit would actually increase multiple times. So then would you consider that, or still it would be out of your watch list?
Yeah, if there are chances that the business can outperform or can show good profit growth, then obviously I will have a look at it. There are many business who are performing poor in past, and then suddenly the management changed. Suddenly their management decided to pivot that business to something else, and the business started performing very well. So there are multiple case studies of such things. So yes, if there is, we find that there is a future growth in any business or any startup, then we do give a look at it.
So, like analyzing numbers is relatively easy because you have something to look at. But when you're analyzing the management of a company, you can't look at certain numbers. So how do you go by with when you're analyzing the management of a company? You have already made a video on that, but can you talk more?
Doing it. First of all, you just have to check out if they are on Twitter or any other platform. You just check out their profile, like what kind of things they are doing, what kind of people are following them, what kind of we will try to understand his or her thought process first. Second, you will try search out whether the management has done any sort of fraud or scam in the past. That's another thing that we look at, because that is very, very important. So as Mr. Buffett said, there are two things. Management should be honest and able. and he should have both the things. If he is honest and not able to manage to run the business properly, then there is no use of honesty. And let's say the management is very able here. He can do lots of things. He can do magics for the company. At the same time, the management is not honest. Then it can create trouble for company as well as shareholders. So both things are important, and we just try ability. With the help of numbers, you can check out the ability. If the company is performing very well, then it's clear-cut indication that the management is able and doing well, right? The only problem is with the honest. And for honesty, you need to check like whether the management has made any kind of fraud in the past, and you will try to track the promoters, like what they are up to, right? And if they are on social media, like what is their thought process, what they are thinking about different kinds of issues. So all these things will give you a better idea about the management.
Yeah. So after I've selected a few good companies and built a portfolio, let's say that the value of my portfolio is 25 to 30 lakhs. So do you, based on the current market scenarios, that is, the market is pretty volatile right now. So do you believe that a portfolio must be hedged at all times, or do you don't believe in hedging?
It depends upon the individual, like what kind of risk he want to take. I mean, there are different kinds of people, they want to take different kinds of risk. There are some people who don't want to take risks. There are people who want to take lots of risks. So it completely depends on the individual, like what kind of risk he want to take.
So let's say that there is a 30-year-old man with a family, and he is capable of taking moderate risk. So should he consider hedging his portfolio, or should he just drop the idea?
I mean, he should try, but for hedging purpose, he can go with some kind of fixed return instruments like PF or government bonds, etc. So that way he can diversify his portfolio into equity. Like if you're talking about a moderate portfolio, then I think that person should invest 40% in the equity, 40% in equity through mutual fund or stock market. If he has knowledge of stock market, then he can directly go there. Or if he doesn't have any kind of knowledge about the stock market, then he can invest through mutual funds, right? Then after that, rest of the money can be invested in some fixed return instruments, and some amount of money can be invested in bonds. So 20% in bonds, and rest 40% in fixed sort of instruments.
So in a country like India, is investing in bonds still worth it when you have an option of FD, which gives you pretty much the same return?
Yeah, I mean, it again depends. Like bonds, there are like some bonds are there who are risk-free at all. Like government bond, if you talk about, NAI is issuing multiple bonds, National Highway Authority of India, and they're giving handsome returns, and it also comes with the tax benefits. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for people to invest in. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, but like there are lots of regulatory constraints for the individual to invest in the different kinds of bonds. But yeah, I mean, in the recent time, SEBI is working on that, and they are trying to give access to the retail investors of the bond market. And they started with Bharat Bond. And I mean, I feel that in future they will come up with lots of new ideas, and that's a very positive sign.
Yeah. So let's go back to equity part. A lot of people don't have the ability to pick individual stocks, so they go with mutual funds. But when they go with mutual funds, even after 1 to 2 years, the fund does not perform well, even though the broader market did pretty good. So should they still stick to that fund, or should they go to other funds or choose index funds or something?
First of all, if you are talking about the equity funds, it is for short, it is for long term. You can't say that in the 1 year the mutual fund has given me, like let's say 4 or 5% return, and then hence I don't want to continue this fund. I mean, mutual funds are for long term, so at least you should track the performance, for at least 2-3 years. That's the point number one. Point number two is performance of the mutual fund. I mean, if you're investing in a mutual fund, your money is managed by the fund manager. So you should track the fund manager's performance, like how he has performed in the past, how he is performing now, what kind of expertise he has, and accordingly you can take the decision. But you shouldn't judge anybody's performance just on the basis of 1.5 years performance. And equity is a long-term thing, so I think you should give him some time to perform, at least 3 years.
Achha. Speaking of mutual funds, I read that there is a negative outflow of funds in the mutual fund segment in equity mutual funds, whereas there is a positive inflow of money in debt mutual funds. So, does this affect the returns of mutual funds in any way, or is it just about something we don't need to focus on?
Yeah, if you're talking about the equity funds, then returns are directly proportional to the business performance of the portfolio companies. Let's say they have invested in 15 different companies. If the businesses perform pretty well in the long run, right, then the funds return would be good. But in the short run, market is, as you know, as Mr. Benjamin Graham said, market is like a voting machine in the short run. So in the short run, lots of things and noise is there. Lots of things are going on. Noise is there. So many people get distracted because of all these things. One shouldn't get distracted, we feel, and they should focus on how the portfolio companies are performing. The portfolio companies are performing well, then you shouldn't be worried about returns and all.
Gotcha. So mutual funds are for long-term investing, but let's come back to short-term investing or trading. So do you support trading, or do you trade in the stock market, or only long-term?
It's only long-term, philosophy that we follow, and we just also recommend others to go for the long-term, because there are two benefits. First of all, you know that the company will perform well, then you will get good returns. That point number one. You know that what you have to look out for. And point number two is compounding works in the long term, or in the long run only. So there are two benefits, and compounding works like a magic. Like you are getting, other kind. You have to make sure that compounding should work in your favor, and it happens in the long run only. So that's why, as far as trading is concerned, so like it's sort of speculation. So one can't advise that to the people, like you should go for that. So long-term theory is something that we follow, and we did lots of mistakes. When we started, we tried trading, we did lots of speculation. So we know that what it's all about, and how the market promotes and why the market promotes trading. So there are different reasons. So that's something that I would not. Everybody knows that someday you should start with trading. Somebody will come to know that what it is all about, and you'll understand the importance of long-term investment.
So when you're talking about long-term investing, you make money only when the market goes up. But in short-term trading, you can make money even when the market is going down or sideways. So does it give an edge to traders when they are compared with investors?
The simple answer to this question is that I haven't seen a billionaire who has accumulated lots of wealth or billions of dollars with the help of trading. I haven't seen anyone. So most of them, and all of them, who are investor, who are, the people who have made lots of money through stock market, they're all long-term investors. You can take the example of Ray Dalio or Mr. Buffett or Mr. Charlie Munger, and there are many more, Mr. Jhunjhunwala, and then they have made lots of money from long-term. So compounding has worked in their favor, and the amazing returns that they have earned, and it's a long-term game.
So there are two basically methods when we are selecting or trying to invest for long-term. The first one is the top-down approach, and the second one is the bottom-up. So if you're analyzing the Indian economy as a whole, what specific things do you look for? Do you look for employment rates or CPI, or do you look for other data points as well?
Yeah, we focus on the bottom-up approach. We focus on the companies first, and then later on we look at, there are many companies who are performing very well. In fact, in spite of the sectors they are in, performing very poorly. So, we don't actually follow the top-down approach. We generally follow the bottom-up, and that is what matters to us. So we go in depth about the company's products, services, their competition, like how the company is doing, their USP, and things like that, and how they can gain more and more market share, and how they can maintain the market share. These are the things that we look at, and for these things we have to understand or different kinds of things about the company. So we go in depth, I mean, the bottom-up approach, that is what we follow, and only things related to company we do follow mainly. And then on the later stage, we think like what sector it is in, and and when you are analyzing the competition, obviously you have to do the industry analysis, sectoral analysis. So it obviously comes into the factor. So the focus is on bottom-up approach for us, and the employment rate and other things. I mean, it depends. I mean, if that company is like you could say that different its companies related to BPO service or something, then yeah, those figures might be of your use. Or if that company is a human resource provider company, then that those numbers might interest you. But as far as the other companies, I mean, we don't do much give much importance to them.
So if you manage to find a good company, but it is not in a very good sector, the sector is, let's say, heavily dependent on government regulations. So would you still consider that company in your portfolio, or would you eradicate it because of the poor performance of the industry?
Yeah, we will think about it. We'll think about that company.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether the sector is good or not. If the company is having good products, then in future the company can perform well. And so particularly there are many companies you would see who are doing great. In fact, automobile industry wasn't doing good worldwide, and then Tesla launched their cars. People thought that it won't do well. And as you could see, it is making the rounds. So it depends on the product and
a big part of Tesla's growth came from speculation. Like people were buying.
I mean, if you take the half the valuation, still it is bigger than lots of automobile companies. In fact, combination of lots of companies. I'm talking about half the valuation right now. It is trading at.
So I personally think that banking is a very difficult sector to analyze and understand because you can't just look at debt in a bank. You have to look at other factors like gross NPAs or CASA ratio or something. So what do you specifically look for when you're analyzing a bank, let's say like HDFC or something?
So for banks, I focus on like because almost everyone in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities having access to the bank. The only problem is that tier 3 cities and rural area, these guys do not have the direct access to the bank. So our main focus is to look out for the banks who are providing. I mean, this is the point number one from the customer's perspective. Second thing is obviously how efficiently the loan system is working for that bank, how efficiently the risk management is. So, I mean, these are the factors. I mean, NP is obviously very, very important for banks. Then, CASA is something that we focus on. Then after that, as far as the customer base is concerned, then we try to focus on the factors like, what is their presence in the rural areas, because that is a new area. And if you have to tap new customers, I mean, we actually have lots of accounts with different banks, and almost all the private banks, they work like same and provide similar services. So it's very difficult to find the USP or competitive advantage. So the main factor is that their presence in the rural and tier 3 cities.
Okay, so before wrapping up the session, let's talk a little bit about the future. So with the changes in algorithmic systems, so do you think it will be more difficult for investors and traders to make profit over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
We are very, very optimistic as far as Indian economy is concerned. We are a developing country and lots of things are there, and as you could see, lots of startups are coming up with different ideas, and this is the first time you could see that many companies are expanding their operations to different countries, and that is happening with the help of technology and the startup ecosystem that is developing in India, that is growing in India, and that is a very, very positive factor. So we see that lots of companies will be coming up, they will be having their IPOs in the market, but obviously we'll have to look at, I mean, they are well-funded companies, valuation could be a very big concern, so you will have to look at, I mean, today only I heard about the IPO of Delhivery, IPO of some other startups, right? So you will have to look at, I mean, they are well-funded companies, will have to look at the valuations carefully. but we are very, very optimistic about the Indian economy going ahead. And in the next 20, 30 years, if you ask me what is something that you would bet on, so I mean, we'd like to bet on the equity market and the startup ecosystem.
So speaking of startups, like I personally don't like to invest in startups because they are usually the IPO is usually in bull markets and they are like valued at a very high price. So do you believe in investing in IPOs or do you just invest in already established companies?
Generally, I mean, IPO, that is a very, IPO is a very different thing, you could say, because, most of the time the IPOs are overvalued. They might give you short-term returns, but for the long term, they might not give, because that merchant banker is valuing that company, right? So he will always try that the company should be very well valued. So if you are looking for undervalued companies, you won't get such companies. You rarely get any such company in the IPO. So pre-IPO, you could say, I mean, if you're asking about the pre-IPO thing, then yeah, we would like to bet on we would like to bet on the startups or companies in the private market. I mean, looking at the valuation and other things, and well-established companies, again, it depends. Like if for the diversification purpose, one could use it, but I mean, looking at the different factors like the growing Indian economy, I mean, one should, if they are willing to, then one should take the risks and should focus on the mid cap, small to mid cap companies and startups. But access to startup is very, very limited these days.
Yeah.
You will have to approach them privately. You'll have to ask them like whether they are they want to raise the money through angel investors or something. And if you, again, the amount required is also very, very big. You should have like at least few crore. So these are a few obstacles for the retail investors. But in future, there might be, in US, there is a product called direct listing. So such things are working out pretty well in US. So if SEBI comes up with that, such kind of things, then maybe more and more startups will go for the direct listing, and more and more people can invest in such companies. And for BSE has come up with the BSE startup program. Actually, that is not getting good response, but that's a good try. So maybe few more NSE or someone else would go for the same thing, and then we could see like some startup investment. That is something that I mean we look forward to.
So do you only invest in Indian companies, or do you think we should find opportunities in foreign companies or countries as well?
Indian companies right now, and the most of the time you would say, I mean, gets invested in our own company as well. We are coming up with lots of products and things like that. So being a company, I mean, we also focus on investing in our own company, our own operations as well. So major chunk of the money goes in like reinvesting the money in our different group companies and different products.
So if somebody wants to start today, so what would be your one piece of advice for that person to succeed in the stock market?
That would be very, very simple. I mean, first of all, if you want to invest, then just don't focus on the returns that you will be getting. It also focus on like how much amount you can save in future. Yeah. Keep investing like 20-30% per month. That is how the saving will accumulate. And later on, if you get around 19% return with a compounding effect, that amount will be a very, very big amount. So that is what, it should not be always like chasing the big returns. It also about, saving, good amount of money and then going for 12-13% returns. And, index fund is something that, people are not aware of. So if you don't want to take risk and bullish on the Indian economy, then one can go for the index fund. So, yeah.
So and a final question, if somebody is good at picking stocks, if he understands risk and fundamental analysis, do you think he can beat the market over the long run, or should he still go with index funds?
If somebody understands the market and he feels that if he put in a lot of hard work, right, if he put in a lot of efforts, and he can find the companies whose growth rate is better than the Indian economy's growth rate, or you could say the index, the companies that are that are in the index. I mean, if the companies that you're picking, their growth rate is better than the other companies or blue chip companies, then one can go for such companies. Otherwise, index fund could be good option.
Sure. So before wrapping up the session, what is your future plan with Finnovation's website and the brand?
Okay, so we just want to help people by launching different kinds of products. Yeah, it's not about just a YouTube channel, right? We started with YouTube channel, that's true, but it's not about just YouTube channel. Currently, most of our team members work on our products and not on the YouTube related things. Our focus is to solve different kinds of problem. By the end of this month, we are coming up with mutual fund products for different companies. And in future we want to, it's always about the problem and solution thing. Wherever we see that people are facing problem, we try to solve it, and that is what we are trying. And we just don't want to solve the problem for Indians, we also want to solve the problem for all the companies around the world and all the people around the globe.
Yeah, that's a great mission to pursue. So Prasad, thank you so much for being with us here today and taking out time. We have sure learned a lot from you. So guys, if you haven't subscribed to Finnovations, you can subscribe to the channel. I'll put a link in the description box. And thank you for watching. See you next time. Till that time, take care. Bye bye.
Pleasure.
So, yeah.